You open your electric bill and feel that quiet irritation again. The number is higher, not dramatically higher, just enough to make you pause. You replay the month in your head. You didn't install new appliances. You didn't suddenly start running industrial equipment in your garage. So, why does it feel like your home is slowly becoming more expensive to exist in? At first, you assume it's seasonal. Maybe it was colder. Maybe hotter. Maybe you used the heater more than you realized. But then it happens again the next month. And again, the pattern becomes harder to ignore. Same habits, same lifestyle, rising cost. What makes it worse is a subtle psychological effect. You start questioning yourself. Are you being careless? Is something secretly draining power? Did you miss something obvious? The system quietly encourages self-blame. It's easier to assume personal inefficiency than structural change. But here's the uncomfortable possibility. What if your bill is increasing not because you're using more energy, but because the pricing system itself has evolved in ways most people never notice? And once you see how it works, you'll realize something important. This isn't random. This isn't about outrage. It's not about conspiracy theories. It's about understanding how modern utility pricing actually works and why your monthly total can rise even when your behavior doesn't change. On this channel, we break down the systems that quietly shape everyday life, money, energy, infrastructure, incentives, because clarity creates leverage, and leverage creates smarter decisions. If that matters to you, make sure you're subscribed. Also, I want to know, what city are you watching from? Energy pricing structures vary dramatically depending on location, regulation, and grid design. Drop your city in the comments. You might be surprised how different the numbers are across regions. Now, let's step back and examine this calmly. Because the story behind your electric bill isn't about one bad month. It's about layered structural changes that have been building for years. For decades, electricity felt simple. You used power. You paid for what you used. The relationship seemed direct and transparent. But over time, that simplicity transformed into something more complex. Not necessarily malicious, but strategically layered. Look closely at your bill today. It's no longer just usage. You'll see supply charges, delivery charges, grid maintenance fees, fuel cost adjustments, environmental compliance riders, transmission costs, service fees. Each item appears small on its own, almost harmless, but stacked together, they create steady upward pressure. Utilities operate in a capital-intensive environment. Infrastructure ages. Transmission lines degrade. Substations require modernization. Integrating renewable energy sources demands new balancing systems and storage technology. These upgrades cost billions. But here's where structure matters. Instead of one large, visible price jump, costs are distributed across categories. A small adjustment here, a seasonal rider there, a fuel recovery mechanism layered quietly into the total. Most customers don't analyze line items. They look at the final number, and gradual increases rarely trigger resistance. Psychology plays a role. A 3% increase doesn't feel alarming, but stack multiple 3% increases across different components, and the compounded result becomes significant. 6 months later, you're paying 15 to 20% more without ever experiencing a single dramatic announcement. Then there's fuel volatility. Even in regions investing heavily in renewables, natural gas remains a dominant balancing fuel. When global gas prices rise, due to geopolitical tension, production constraints, or market speculation, utilities often pass those increases directly to consumers through automatic fuel adjustment clauses. These mechanisms are designed to protect utility margins from commodity swings, but they transfer instability to the consumer. And here's the subtle shift. The system is built to preserve operational continuity for providers, predictability for companies, variability for customers. That asymmetry rarely makes headlines, but it shows up on your bill. Now layer in another structural change, time of use pricing. On paper, it sounds efficient. Electricity costs more when demand is high and less when demand is low. This encourages people to shift usage away from peak hours, reducing strain on the grid. But consider how this interacts with normal human behavior. Peak pricing often aligns with the exact hours people live their lives, late afternoon and early evening. when families return home, when dinner is cooked, when laundry runs, when lights turn on. You're not being wasteful. You're following a routine shared by millions. If peak hour rates are significantly higher, your total bill increases even if total consumption stays roughly the same. The price per unit changes depending on when you use it. Smart meters amplify this effect. They allow granular tracking of consumption in real time. Some regions now experiment with dynamic pricing models that shift rates daily based on grid conditions. From a system efficiency perspective, this is rational. From a consumer stability perspective, it introduces unpredictability. Add inflation, add rising labor costs, add cybersecurity investments, add renewable integration mandates. Each layer introduces cost. Each cost is distributed across categories, rarely centralized, rarely simplified. Complexity becomes a shield. When pricing structures are complicated, fewer people challenge them. Most customers assume the math is too technical to dissect, and disengagement reduces pressure for transparency. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself this. If your income increased unpredictably every month, would you feel stable? Probably not. Yet, that's what's happened to energy pricing. Variability embedded into a system most people assumed was stable. The question isn't whether utilities need revenue. They do. Infrastructure must function. But the structure of cost transfer matters. And the more dynamic the pricing becomes, the more exposed households are to fluctuation, which leads to the practical question. What can you actually control? First, separate emotion from structure. When you understand that your rising bill is influenced by layered systemic factors, fuel adjustments, time of use models, infrastructure recovery, regulatory compliance, you stop internalizing all the blame. Second, identify leverage points. Check whether your provider offers alternative rate plans. Some regions allow customers to opt out of time-of-use pricing in favor of flat-rate models. Depending on your schedule, that shift alone can stabilize monthly totals. Analyze peak hour usage, not obsessively, strategically. Large appliances, EV charging, and high-load devices often drive spikes. Shifting timing, when possible, can reduce exposure to premium rates without reducing comfort. Next, think in terms of partial resilience, not extreme off-grid living, but incremental autonomy, small battery systems, load management devices, smart thermostats that adapt to pricing signals, even modest solar integration in certain regions. The goal isn't independence from the grid. It's negotiating power within it. And this is where structured information matters. Random upgrades can waste money. Overinvesting in one solution without understanding your pricing model often backfires. If you want a clearer breakdown of practical tools and evaluation frameworks that help you assess your own energy costs more strategically, there's a resource linked in the description that walks through it step by step. It's not about hype or drastic lifestyle changes. It's about understanding your numbers and making decisions based on structure rather than frustration. Because here's the reality. Your electric bill getting worse isn't a personal failure. It's a predictable outcome of layered systemic evolution. Infrastructure financing, commodity volatility, dynamic pricing, regulatory shifts. You're not crazy. But once you recognize the pattern, you have a choice. Absorb the increases passively, or understand the system and make smarter decisions within it.